Welcome to this episode of UXD, where we will talk more about LeanUX and how to measure changes in user behavior to determine whether your design decisions were good or bad. I'm your host, Nazmul Idris, a developer advocate passionate about design and mobile, and have a very special guest with me on the show today.
Hi, I'm Laura Klein. I'm a user experience designer who loves data. Thanks for inviting me.
You're most welcome, and thank you for being here. So, LeanUX is a way to apply the methods of learning as quickly as possible and reducing the cycle time through what's called the build, measure, and learn loop to the process of user experience design. Now, practicing LeanUX means that you're always validating with users that you're designing something that people will actually use. It's about designing products that are both usable and useful. Laura wrote a really good book about this called UX for Lean Startups. In this episode, we're going to talk about qualitative and quantitative research, what they are, how to use them, and most importantly, why to use them. So Laura, why do developers and designers need to know different types of research? What's that got to do with building products?
It's an excellent question. So research, both qualitative and quantitative, is the key to building great products. Without measuring the results of our work through things like analytics, A/B testing, qualitative research, and a host of other methods, we really can't understand the impact that our changes are having on end users. This means that we can't do things like make good product choices or learn from any mistakes we might make.
That makes sense. So these are just different ways of measuring results. So what is qualitative research exactly?
Qualitative research is about observing and listening to people. So it includes things like usability testing, customer development interviews, and in-context studies where you might observe somebody using a product in their natural environment. There are tons of types of qualitative research, but you can tell a research is qualitative if it involves talking to people or observing real human behavior.
I see, that makes sense. So now these tests, it doesn't sound like they're statistically significant, correct?
That's right, they're not.
Oh, so why do them? What are they good for?
So they're great for things like understanding the problem that you're going to solve for a user or learning the context that your product is going to be used in. They're also great for building empathy and for really understanding the person that you're building the product for.
That makes sense. So what about quantitative research? How is that different than qualitative?
So quantitative research is often the preferred method of engineers. It includes things like analytics, A/B testing, funnel metrics. It's always statistically significant, and it never really involves talking to humans, which might be why it's so beloved of engineers. But quantitative research, as the name implies, is all about the data.
That makes sense. So I get to pick whichever one I like, right?
No, sadly you do not. See, qual and quant teach you really different things about both your user and your product. As a general rule, quantitative research tells you exactly what is happening with your product, while qualitative research tells you why it's happening. So quant is what, qual is why. If you use both of these together, you get an enormous amount of information about both your product and your users, and you can come up with some great ideas about how to make it better.
That makes sense. That's really cool. So can you give me an example of how they work together?
Yeah. So let's imagine that you have a product and you're actually charging people to use it.
What?
I know, crazy, but I thought you might like it. So at some point, you need to actually put the people through a checkout flow of some sort.
So you mean getting their payment information, shipping and billing address, and so on?
Exactly. So you can visualize your checkout flow as a funnel. Let's imagine that this particular flow requires all sorts of things. That it requires people to create an account, select the plan they want, enter their credit card and address information, confirm the purchase, and then the final screen is the thank you screen. So you want to measure not just how many people make it all the way through to the thank you screen. You also want to measure the drop-off at each step of the funnel.
Why is that?
Well, it gives you more detailed information about where people are getting stuck. See, picture that funnel. 100% of the people who want to buy your product or think they want to buy your product start at the first step. And then let's say you lose 20% there. Then maybe you lose 10% at the next step. And then 50% of the remaining people drop off the next step.
Ouch.
And then maybe a third on the last step. And that means that only a small percentage of the people who started at the top are actually getting to the bottom of the funnel.
Yikes.
So if you start with 100 people, then you go to 80, and then 72, and then 36, and then 24.
Wow.
And suddenly only 24 people are actually making it through to the end and paying you for your product. But the nice thing about knowing how many people you lose at each step is that you can use that information to decide which step to make changes to in order to best increase the number of people who make it all the way to the end.
I see. So you might want to make some changes in this case to step 3 where you're losing 50% of the people.
That's right. That's clearly a friction point. But of course, At this point, we just know that people are dropping off there. We don't know why yet.
Can we just guess?
Well, we could, but our guesses would be a lot better if we did some observational user research to understand whether there's a specific problem that people are having on that step. So, for example, maybe there's something really confusing, or maybe there's some information that people don't have available to them on that step.
Right.
Or maybe the page just loads really slowly for some people.
That makes
By
sense.
observing 5 or 6 people going through that whole checkout flow, you can start to make some much better guesses about what you'd want to fix on that step 3.
That makes sense. So now let's say we know what the problem is. What do we do then?
Well, then you fix it. Of course, if it involves big changes to that step or to the rest of the flow, you might want to do some qualitative usability research while you're designing it.
Got it.
That can help make sure that your next version of the checkout flow doesn't introduce new usability problems. So when you're pretty sure you've got a good change to the product, you build it and you ship it.
That makes sense.
But that's not the end, of course.
Oh.
You still need to release the fix in an A/B test.
Oh.
Yeah. So A/B testing is another form of quantitative research.
Huh.
This means that we can validate that we've really fixed the problem that we had and we haven't introduced new ones.
Oh, I see. So this way we've identified what the problem is with quantitative research. And then we've got an idea of why the problem is happening with qualitative. But then we actually then use qualitative research to help design the change and then confirm that we fixed it with quantitative again.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cool. That makes sense. So I'm going to play devil's advocate now. So I've heard that it's not worth it to do qualitative research because users really don't know what they want. So asking them is useless. Is that true?
Well, I've heard that too. And it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how to do good qualitative user research. So let's be totally clear. If you're just asking people what you should build and then going and building it, you're probably not going to make a very good product.
True.
That's 100% true. But to be fair, you're not actually doing good qualitative research. You're just outsourcing your entire product development process to your users. And you know what? They're probably not great at designing fantastic products.
True.
That's your job.
Yes.
You're supposed to be designing the product. So if you learn good qualitative user research skills, you're going to be able to learn a huge amount from your users without ever once asking that question. So what do you think this product should do?
That makes sense. So now, what about the argument that you cannot make big design changes with A/B testing and quantitative research? I've heard that. I've heard a lot of designers say that.
Yeah, a lot of them do say that. And again, it's a complete misunderstanding, this time of quantitative research.
Oh.
See, remember, analytics, A/B testing, funnel metrics, those are just tools, right?
Got it.
They're hammers. You can test anything you want using these tools. The fact that you're doing A/B testing doesn't dictate what you can test.
Oh.
I mean, you could test, button colors or 42 shades of blue or whatever you want. All sorts of little optimizations like that.
Right.
But you can also test entirely different flows against one another. You can test how users behave when they have a new feature against how they behave when they don't have the new feature. A/B testing isn't just for optimization. It's a marvelous tool for understanding the real impact that your design changes are having on the end user.
Oh, that makes sense. So it sounds like using quantitative and qualitative together is more powerful than just using each one by itself.
That's exactly right.
That makes sense. So that's all we have time for today. If you'd like to learn more about qualitative and quantitative research methods, please check out Laura's book, UX for Lean Startups. It's amazing. It has a lot of tips and tactics for doing the right kind of research at the right time. Laura, thanks again for joining us here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was my pleasure. Go build something awesome.
And finally, if you haven't already, please join our UX community on Google+. Thanks again for watching, and goodbye.